Hey, thanks for joining us. You're probably wondering why I'm sitting in front of someone with a cowboy hat. There's a lasso on the table. Sitting in front of me right now, Paniolo, equestrian, horseman, and there's a lot of things about you, and we will eventually get into, but explain the hat and the lasso. Ladies and gentlemen, look, it's Raymond Noh.
Hey. Oh, Makani, first of all, thank you for the invitation to join you here on this, what I think is a great show you're putting together.
Oh, mahalo.
Yeah, just my love of horses. And of course, I've got full-on hardcore Paniolo friends all my life. I don't know if I'd be a weekend warrior or not, but I've been doing it many, many decades. I do rope and participated in lots of rodeos all my life. And, you know, I'm a city boy, you know, born to parents that know nothing about horses or cows, but, you know, I don't know, like many other kids growing up, I remember I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and I just wanted to be a cowboy.
Wow.
You know? And so
that's,
yeah.
it's been a huge part of your life.
It really has.
Before we start talking about the depth of your equestrian and horses, where'd you go to high school?
Well, you go to high school where mom tells you to go, right? So I went to Punahou. You know,
Nice.
We started out at Iolani, and
Wow.
all boys school at the time, and I'm one of 3 boys. So mom thought, you know what? All boys. I think these kids need to go to a place where there's girls. So I think for the same tuition, back then I think it was like $3,000 a year for Punahou and Iolani.
Punahou was
Same.
$3,000 a year.
Back then.
What
We're
is it
talking
now?
Decades. I
Like
think it's like
300,000?
about $27,000 a year.
Wow.
So anyway, mom and dad, they sent their 3 sons to Iolani, and then mom said, hey, you know, Punahou's got the exact same tuition, and if others can send their kids to Punahou, I remember her saying this. She says, why can't I? So my 2 brothers went straight from Iolani to Punahou.
Wow.
This kid tried. Punahou said, no. Next year, try again. No. I'm not kidding you. 3 times in a row, Punahou said no. So finally, they said, you know what? Send him to a public school. See how he gets along with girls and a mixed crowd. So finally, Punahou said, okay, we'll bring him in 4th grade. And like a lot of young boys, then you go to Punahou before 7th grade. They have a policy. You have to repeat the grade. If you're a boy,
right.
you repeat the grade because there's this theory that girls, you know, mature faster than boys. I don't know about that, but I actually think it's true. I was really glad that they sent me back a year. It was fun.
So now that we know who we're talking to, Mr. Raymond Noh, of course, we're a cultured show, so we always like to ho'okupu our guests. And a little bit different nowadays because the CDC says this is how we present ho'okupu our gifts to our guests. So mahalo for that. Mahalo for the gifts in front of me. You don't fool around. This is gifts beyond. But I want to... because I'm thirsty.
This on my hat. How's that?
There you go. Perfect. Kukui on that. Is that a regular hat you use when you?
No, it's not. It actually started out as a joke. Someone wanted me to wear a cowboy hat to a party, and I was on the main, and I found this.
The biggest one possible.
Yeah, I think you actually find this out in the fields with the Mexican migrant workers. But I bought it as a joke, and I started wearing it. And you know what? It keeps the sun. I even golf in this hat.
No way.
Yeah, but I mean, it really keeps your face shaded. And you know, it's a different kind of a look, and so here I am.
So have you ever used it riding horse?
Oh yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do ride. Like I said, I ride horses a lot, and you know, the sun's out there burning on your face. So,
Punahou, you went from the 4th grade. Where did horses come in? Because you grew up where?
I grew up in the city. I grew up I think we lived near University, then we lived Kaimiki, but. When I went to Punahou in the 4th grade, there was a kid in my class whose family had horses, and his name was George. And to this day, he's one of my best friends. But George Sumner, and Georgie would sometimes bring his cowboy boots in a bag because he'd catch a ride with another family after school, and they had horses in Waimanalo. So I saw that Makani. I saw these cowboy boots, and I thought, whoa, cowboy boots, right? Anyway, I said I got to become friends with this kid. So we became really good friends, and just on a whim, he said, hey, when you want, if you ever can, come up to the stables. So I caught a ride out to where my dad was playing golf at Olomana. My dad was a golfer, played golf at Olomana Golf Course, and I went with him one day, and I said, Dad, I'm going to walk across the street to go to these stables. And I was age 10, and that was the start of it, Makani.
So it wasn't even horses per se. It was just cowboy boots.
Well, yeah, it was just this kid had cowboy boots, and then we got talking, and he told me his family had horses, and next thing you know, we're drawing pictures of how our ranch is going to look one day. Kids, when you have imagination.
Walked across the street, got to the stable. What was it like? It in your mindset, if you can remember back, seeing the horses.
Yeah, I mean,
you just knew.
Horses in itself just kind of turned me on, So yeah, I just knew, and then they invited me over all the time. So I ended up catching rides almost like 4 days a week after school. And I look back on it. My mom says, "Yeah, go." And I never rode a horse. I was there. I'm not kidding you. 4 days a week, and not until I was about age 11 and a half did I get offered to ride a horse. So that whole time, I was your audience knows the word, I was the garut, I shoveled manure, I fed horses, I brushed horses, I bathed horses, but never got to ride. So finally, when I got my data a chance to ride, I took a lesson, and I hit the ground like 15, 16 times.
Hold that thought. If you're joining us right now, you're looking at Raymond Noh of Noh Foods, and you're like, how the hell is this guy a cowboy or an equestrian? We're getting deep in that with Raymond Noh right here on Culturized. Bringing you what matters. Viewers can receive the Star Advertiser digital full access subscription for just $9.95 per month. Go to staradvertiser.com and click on subscribe. Use the code AHIGHTHING. Aloha Termite and Pest Control, your local and leading pest and termite control solution in the state. Always providing you superior service with Aloha. Sitting here with Raymond Noh. First of all, mahalo for being here. I was going to say a lot of people in Hawaii, but a lot of people in the world know the food product, but they don't know. A lot of people don't know. You're a equestrian. Is that a fair word? Equestrian cowboy.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the first time you went to a stable with your friend in Waimanalo, and you fell in love with horses. Did you start? What is your first recollection of horses? Did you go straight to riding? Did you go straight to?
Well, I mean, look, I had ridden a few times before then. I went to Cokehead Stables, we rented a horse, all that kind of stuff. And before we continue, I'm going to pop our Hawaiian iced tea.
I love it. I have some in my mouth.
First. So, cheers.
Cheers. But before you read, you worked in the stable.
Oh, I did.
Picking up manure.
I literally did.
What was that story?
I shoveled manure, and by the time I was 11, I mean, there must have been 80 horses at the stables, right? Town and Country Stables, which is still there in Waimanalo. I was just there yesterday, as a matter of fact. Hadn't been there in maybe 15 years, but by the time I was 11, like a lot of ranch country kids grow up, I was driving a full-on Ford truck at age 11.
See?
I was, and a full-on John Deere tractor, because there's chores to be done.
Right.
And I was assigned to feed horses in the afternoon. I mean, 80 horses. So I would drive one day the old Ford pickup truck, column shift, and Georgie, my pal, was on the back throwing hay into the stalls. And the next day he'd drive and I'd throw the hay.
How old were you guys at this time?
11.
Wow. 11 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's part of, even before you can go on horseback, you have to know all these things. You have to know how to clean the stable. You have to feed.
Well, I mean, not everybody learns that way. I really literally learned the old style way. I mean, everything from brushing horses, cleaning horses' hooves out, and, doing all the stuff that I now look back on and I go, wow, that really made me a much more well-rounded horseman than I am today.
I could easily say the culture of horses that taught you a lot of responsibility.
Sure, absolutely.
What is one thing at the time, at 11 years old, was it that you would go to the stable and go, oh, I don't want to do this? Was it scooping manure? Was it cleaning?
I was just so in love with the whole thing, the whole environment. And I will tell you, looking back, and I've been saying this for many years, that around the stables, you find a lot of girls, a lot of young girls. You don't find too many guys, right? The guys are out playing baseball, and I did that too. But to this day, I tell parents, I remember when you go to a stables, you see like 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girls, little girls with 1,000-pound horses that they're in love with, they're brushing, and they're riding, and they're building such self-esteem and confidence. It is just unbelievable. So for me, by the time these girls get to 15, 16, where it's like dating age, the boys don't stand a chance with these girls. These girls are so confident.
Literally got a stallion.
And they go, hey, my whole life has been a 1,000-pound animal. It's really a great environment.
So by this time you go home and you tell your parents, I can have one horse.
Well,
How old were you when you? Now you're going from Waimanalo, working in the stable, and you go back home to Kaimuki.
yeah, I go back home again. My parents, just city folks, they didn't know what. I come home full of manure, full of dirt, full of something else that I think you and your brother and I want me to talk about, because every year there's breeding season, and I was assigned a certain job that was just hilarious when you tell the story. But before we do that, no, I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, let's go straight into that part, because not a lot of people, again, know these things about you. I mean, you went the entire horse culture. I'm just going to use that term, horse culture, even to breeding. What?
Well, you know, to get, like any creature, right? To get horses, you got to breed them, you know, and they got to make babies. By the way, people are shocked when I'm going to divert here. If I ask you right now, how many horses do you think are on the island of Oahu? I ask many people this question, and they go, oh, maybe 500, maybe 1,000. Well, I once told in front of one of our equine veterinarians on the island, I said to a person, I said, well, they did a study back in the mid-90s, and they guesstimated about 10 to 12,000 horses are on Oahu.
On Oahu?
Yeah, and Dr. Jimenez was right there. He goes, Raymond, you got to double that number. So literally, there's 20,000 horses on this island. People are like,
how many
what?
ranches are there on this island?
Well, there's ranches here and there. Of course, people know about Kualoa Ranch, and you know, John Morgan might have 300 horses himself. But and then on every island, excuse me, Makani, there are like, you know, Maui might have 12,000 horses, the big island. So
growing up, Kaimuki, spent all your days in the stables in Waimanalo, Punahou High School. Your ethnic background is what?
Korean.
Right. Now, a lot of this tradition went into that. Now, you college, polo, and then you were saying earlier that by, you know, about 11 years of polo, and then you started to realize, okay, maybe I got to focus on the business.
Yeah.
And
well, it was the other way around. It was a couple of years of polo after college, and then decided, hey, you know what? If I'm going to do something with our food company, take it outside of Hawaii.
Now the food company was already around. Right?
It was around. It started in 1963, if I may just give you a quick background. 1961, Mom and Dad opened the first formal Korean restaurant in Honolulu.
No way.
Yeah. And people are going to hear the name. They're going to say, whoa.
Where was it?
It was right off Kaheka Street, right? A block away from the old police station. And the name was Arirang. Yeah, exactly. People hear Arirang, they go, whoa, because it became a famous hostess bar and, you know, exotic dancing and all that. But that's several owners after Mom and Dad. They kept the name, by the way.
Korean restaurant.
Arirang. And Arirang, by the way, is the name of the probably the most legendary traditional old Korean folk song, Arirang. But real quickly, Dad, who loved to cook, created this restaurant, and so Mom and Dad ran this restaurant. I was just a itty bitty 4-year-old kid, whatever, and so, you know, if you have a Korean restaurant, you better have kimchi, right? So I remember the ladies in the kitchen on their off time constantly chopping ginger, chopping chili pepper, chopping garlic, you know, preparing this batch to make kimchi. And tedious. And so my father, my dad's brain, I was always working, how can I keep the flavor of something, but make it a shortcut? Wow. So he started experimenting with dehydrated chili pepper and powderized ginger, and he put together a formula for his use in the restaurant.
Wow.
And lo and behold, he had this kimchi powder mix that we still sell today. And it worked. So all the girls now had to do was prepare the cabbage by chopping it, soaking it in salt water overnight, draining it, and then taking a scoop of this ready-made powder mix, right? And mix it up, and voila, you got kimchi. So to this day, that's how the whole company started.
So you could say that was the first product.
That was the first product.
Wow.
And you know, what's so crazy, and I'm going to jump around here, but you know, now everybody knows kimchi. I mean, the foodies know kimchi, right? I mean, every corner of this country.
Now it's the big thing. It's healthy for you.
It's healthy.
It's always been, but now people are catching on.
10 years ago, people didn't know kimchi. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And they knew very little about Korean food, you know. And I'm just proud to say that since 1961, and then Dad eventually sold the restaurant. But then, after the kimchi, someone would say, "Oh, Eddie," my dad said, "Eddie, oh, I love sweet sour spare ribs. It's my favorite Chinese dish." And my dad would say, duck soup, no problem. So he would experiment with a sweet sour spare ribs mix, Makani. Wow. And being one of 3 sons, we ate sweet sour Monday, Tuesday. I'm not kidding. We were his guinea pigs. And he'd say, "Okay, which one? A, B, or C?" And then by the end of the week, he'd settle on one of the formulas. And now we had a new recipe.
What's amazing is his mind is, I can't even fathom how he would eat something like sweet sour, and he would basically, how can I turn this into powder?
Exactly. Kikkoman, $1 billion company, wrote him a letter once in 1969. They said, "Mr. Noh, congratulations. You're the first ever to do a powderized teriyaki mix. Could you please send us the formula?" My dad goes, "Well, thanks for the compliment, but
no,
I'm not
it's
that
fine.
stupid. I didn't go to college, but I'm not that dumb."
And from there, so once the restaurant was sold, was his plan to go into and start creating these powders, or he just
when he
still
sold
doing
the
it?
restaurant, he probably had 4 different mixes, 4 different products. One being Korean barbecue, right? Kalbi, which today is huge, right? People love Korean barbecue. But anyway, yeah, he did that. But Mom and Dad always had their irons in a lot of fire. They owned they built a hotel on Waikiki. They were hoteliers, and and they had a couple of hotels. I mean, just hard-working local folks. So I'm so proud.
So that's again, it's a culture thing. That's where you get your hardworking ethic from. Now, was it because they told you, or because you observed that?
That what?
That work ethic that you have today?
Oh, I just think it was just a part of all that. And again, growing up at the stables, being tasked with so many things. I've got 2 older brothers, and we're all a little different, but I'm the youngest, and it was me who actually took the role of the company to expand outside of Hawaii and build it to this day. We have a nice distribution, and we have an office. We have good distribution on the mainland, far bigger than Hawaii. People are surprised to hear that. But
so it started with a restaurant, a kimchi powder mix.
Right.
Here's something interesting. Maybe a lot of people know, but maybe a lot of people don't know. Polo player. So you rodeos, yes, stables, yes, but you went into another direction of horses.
I did.
Polo.
Again, when I was young, growing up at the stables, the guy who ran the place, the cowboy guy, Buddy Gibson, he started playing polo, and they played out at Mokuleia, and so I would be a part of his, getting the horses ready, grooming them, and I was around the sport from an early age, and I just, of course, being a guy who rides, man, polo is just an incredible game.
How did polo come to?
Well, I'll tell you. Here's a little known fact. Polo's been played in Hawaii longer than it's been played on the mainland U.S.
Wow.
And I do a lot of announcing at the polo field when I'm not playing, and I love telling the story that, they played the first polo match in Long Island, New York in 1881, but the first polo match played in Hawaii was 1876. So us guys beat those guys by 5 years, and that was played up country, Haile Maile, on the slopes of Haleakala.
Because it's an Indian sport, right? East Indian sport.
It's the game actually originated from Mongolia, from northern Asia, and then it made its way down through Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Simon stands, all kinds of stands. But it came down to India, and the British were in rule at the time, so they adopted the game.
I see. There's the connection.
And then they took it home to Britain. They actually wrote a formal book for it called the Hurlingham Rule Book, and then from there it just flourished all over the world. But a rancher on Maui who actually had a cattle ranch on Kaho'olawe, very few people knew there was a full-fledged cattle ranch on Kaho'olawe. And the rancher was Gordon von Temsky. And he went to England once, and he came home with a bunch of polo mallets, and he went back up to upcountry Maui, and he gave them to some of the ranch owners, some of the top cowboys. And next thing you know, Maui was playing polo.
So you got these paniolos, working ranch guys, playing polo.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there is, not only in Hawaii, but Texas as well, and other parts, there's a real connection between polo and cowboys. Not worldwide, but in the United States. And Hawaii for sure. The paniolos are very much a part of the history.
So it wasn't, I was thinking because the British, Hawaii had a connection with the British. But it was the cowboys that introduced it to Maui.
It was the ranchers.
How did it grow from there? They just loved the sport and
yeah. So then other prominent names like the Baldwins and the Rices and the Dillinghams, they all got involved with polo. And, you know, back in the heyday, Honolulu Stadium on Eisenberg, it wasn't uncommon on a Friday night under the lights, 6,000, 7,000 spectators to watch a polo match. Wow. And the stables for the horses was at Kapolani Park where the tennis courts are now.
And there used to be a racetrack there too,
There used to be way back in the day. There's old photos of Kapolani Park, and that's why they built the park. Because the king loved horse racing, so he had that park, Kapolani Park, built for a racetrack. And inside the racetrack, they had polo matches. But that's way back in the horse and buggy days.
Where did a lot of people, polo is synonymous with like this higher upper echelon of people and you know, how did that that just become because the horses were expensive?
Well, yeah, and I think it is. You know, always the world's elite and the royals and all that. Of course, they have access to horses and that kind of activity. So yeah, there is that element to it, you know. And of course, to own a horse and feed a horse is not cheap, right? Or I mean, you know.
When did you start playing?
Well, it was just a progression as a kid, you know, growing up around this guy and being. So I started really playing when I got out of college, and I worked and I saved my money and I bought a horse and I bought another horse and all that. And then there was a time when I left Honolulu and I opened our office in Los Angeles, California at age 23, and I just said, you know what, I got to focus on Noh Foods of Hawaii, and I'm not going to play polo. And so about 10, 11 years of my life, there's no polo, and I just worked.
So if you're joining us coming up on the extended version over at YouTube, join us and we'll talk more with Raymond Noh about Noh Foods Hawaii, polo, horses, and culture right here on Culturized. 4 powdered products: kimchi,
Korean
sweet
kimchi, sweet sour spare ribs, Japanese teriyaki, and a Korean barbecue. Those are the genesis of Noh Foods.
And so and then your dad just didn't. So at what point? Now, did you have a hand or a mind in saying, "Hey, let's try this, let's try that"? Was it all him?
No, eventually I did, but in the beginning, you know, again, we're still going through school and all that. You know, my dad, born and raised here. He's of Korean ancestry, but his father and my mother's father, my grandparents, came over from Korea. My grandparents, I think, were the first wave of the Koreans that came, like 1904. Right. So both my parents are born here. So, you know, I don't care what your ethnic background is. When you're born in Hawaii, you grew up in a local environment. So you have an appreciation of everybody's race and food and culture. So my dad literally just decided, okay, well, I have a lot of Portuguese friends. I know how to make vingados, so I'm going to make vingados, right? And I got a couple of Pake friends, Chinese pals, so I'm going to do a Char Siu, you know, and Filipinos, adobo. So really, our product line truly reflects all the different races and the rainbow of cultures, if you will,
and that's
that make up Hawaii.
Truly, in Noh Foods, and you can be. This is what I like. You can be living on the mainland. You go away to college. You go away to live. And when we go on, anybody that lives, we're always missing something, right? It's always going to be the food,
right?
And because now you can find Noh products all over the continent.
You can.
And that's what is totally cool about it, because my friends will be like, hey, you can send me some Char Siu. I was like, how about I show you where the powder is and you can make it yourself.
Yeah. And, you know, online, of course, everybody buys Amazon products. We're all over Amazon and all over lots of other websites. And
when did you guys start making beverages?
Hawaiian iced tea. This beverage has been around a long time, believe it or not.
Because you have the powder tea.
Exactly.
Is this the same one?
Good segue. This is our new looking package of our Hawaiian iced tea, but it all started with this powdered mix. And there's a big story to that. You and I can talk for days about the different stories of Noh Foods, but this iced tea was originated from a little back laboratory in Manhattan, New York, in New York City. Wow. And my father became friends with this old Jewish kind of a mad scientist guy. And Dr. Hyman was the first guy to ever do what do they call that? Freeze-dried coffee. Mm-hmm. He had the patent on freeze-dried coffee, and my dad's friend. And so they created this iced tea powder together. So we've had this like long time.
Wow.
A long time.
Freeze-dried. And then here's the latest one. I'm looking at this. I want to say this right here. So I remember you and I having a conversation
About this?
I was kind of upset at the time because I remember this conversation you and I had was like, talking about living on the mainland and people outside of Hawaii, they love to do, let's have a luau at our house.
Right.
And I remember saying, why don't you take all these products that are local and Hawaiian and put it in a box so somebody can just buy one box. And then like a couple weeks later, that's the.
Are you trying to take credit for
yes,
this product?
Yes, I am. And even more mad because I didn't end up on the box. But
you're like Glenn Tamor from Tamor. I told you to say yes to no, right? It was me who said say yes to no. I go, yeah, Glenn, that's you.
But I think more importantly is that work ethic, that side of you that was like you can bring things to fruition like that. And you created this.
Yeah. Well, at first, here's what I thought you were going to go. We thought that this was actually you. You said, that should have been me.
It was supposed to be. Right. I was like, I remember
you're right.
You showed me the box, and I was like,
yeah. No, as we just said earlier, we've created such a variety of products, and so people would ask us, hey, do you have this for this luau dish? Do you have this product for this luau dish? And we just said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just put together what we already have? So we got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, 6 or 7 items that are in this box. And you literally can make all these very traditional luau dishes you could be anywhere in the world, including have poke, lomi salmon, but you can have a traditional luau for 4. But before we go there, Makani, thank you for having me on as a guest. In Hawaii, we never get invited and come empty-handed. So from my backyard, I give you what probably I think, my friends tell me, the best avocado on the island.
Ooh,
right here.
Mahalo for that.
From Mano.
You know it's culture when he can bring products from his company, but give you something real.
Yeah.
Avocado.
What kind of avocado is it?
And we're good friends when I can bring you one with no shame. The bird's already been attacking this one, but I just still give it to him.
Your friend Lanai wants to know what kind of avocado.
I wish I did. There's 140 different types of, but I need to find out because this one is buttery. It's got this one is that's a meal in itself.
You should just put a label here.
You put a little bit of Noh's Hawaiian hot sauce and oh my God.
No, just put a label on here. No, what kind of avocado is that? No Foods.
I got to tell you a quick story about this, even if we run out of time. We came out with this Korean hot sauce, gochujang, like 40 years ago. And about 30 years ago, when I opened up our office in LA, I put this on the shelf. I got the Ralphs and the Safeways in LA to say, yeah, okay, we'll put it on. 6 months later, they call me. They say, hey, you know what? This product isn't selling. Nobody knows what Korean hot sauce is. Take it off. Can you remove it? So I said, okay, but can you give me a chance to come back with another product? They said, fine. I relabeled that same product, and I called it Hawaiian hot sauce. Voila, it started selling. Guess what? Today, everybody goes, yeah, never mind the Hawaiian. We all want a Korean hot sauce. That's what's happening. That's what's fun thing. We were way ahead of our time with Korean hot sauce.
There's one more story I want to talk to you about before we wrap this, because we talk culture. This is food culture. Noh Foods has brought every culture into food, and everybody can experience it. A few years back, there was this controversy about the word aloha poke, right? Mm-hmm. You actually had to experience something like that, where somebody outside of Hawaii was trying to claim a word, right? A word. What was that about? Because it was one of your sauces.
Right. It wasn't outside of Hawaii. It's the word huli huli that we all know is chicken. Mm-hmm. But there's a company that eventually got bought by these Caucasian mainland people, and they trademarked the word huli huli.
That's crazy.
So not even a church or a Papuana or a baseball team can sell huli huli chicken anymore in Hawaii. We got to call it roasted chicken because this mainland company coined the word. It's just like that aloha poke thing.
So from a business standpoint, yeah, we understand it, but from a cultural standpoint, that's got to make your blood boil at the same time, because yes, it affected you business wise, but even just growing up as a local person, it's like how are you going to take this Hawaiian word, and patent that?
Yeah.
It affected you though, because you had to change one of your products.
Well, we did. So we had a Huli Huli sauce, and then we had to settle this and agree not to use the word Huli Huli, which is fine because we came up with the word hula hula, right? Now in Hawaii, we all know Huli Huli. Right. Outside of Hawaii, people don't know what Huli Huli is. So now our product hula hula might be found in a Walmart in Birmingham, Alabama, and they know what hula hula is, and we have this we have a caricature of a chicken in a hula skirt doing a hula, and that's kind of cool. A chicken, dancing,
makes
and
sense.
so it, as they say, when something closes, something opens.
It's always beyond me though. Yeah, it's beyond me, and we got to give you credit for. I mean, just going through that whole thing. It's almost bizarre to me to think that somebody can take the word aloha. Even if it's aloha poke, it's bizarre to me that somebody can take the word huli huli. That's like me. It's identity theft. Right. That's how I see it. Yeah. But you guys combated that, and you get the hula hula sauce.
Well, there's so much to talk about. I love your show, really, because we talk about what we talked about today, and in the segments. But there's so many things that Hawaii affects internationally. I mean, Wikipedia, right? People don't know it comes from wiki, right? The word wiki, but I mean, and nobody took that guy to court saying, hey, how can you steal our Hawaiian word and make big money on this? And now the whole world knows Wikipedia. But there's so many great stories. People don't know that the vice chairman of the Communist Party, Deng Xiaoping, 1/4 Hawaiian blood. People don't know that.
Wow.
Amazing. Hawaii has touched so many corners of this world, of this earth, without people knowing it.
And that's the beauty, again, of the food culture, because you guys are part of it. You guys are spreading the local culture and the Hawaiian culture out. So mahalo for joining me today, sharing a part of your life that not a lot of people know. And, of course, always sharing the Noh Foods brand of product. Thanks for making time on this day. So if you're joining us, it's culturized.com is the website, the YouTube channel. If you're watching us right now on this extended version, hit the subscribe button, comment down below if you want Raymond to create a new product or put me on the box. This is Culturized.